Whether you're interested in scrapbooking, junk journaling, or just like including ephemera in your vignettes, I'm going to show you how to make the most amazing and unique ephemera from things that are easy to find or that you already have at home in a junk drawer. Welcome to the Chic Show. In addition to YouTube, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I printed out this vintage bingo card on my computer, and then I used a glue stick to glue it to some cardstock. Now I'm going through my spare buttons and I'm just placing them on my bingo card. I'm trying to spread out the colors a bit and the sizes to get a unique look. Once I got them where I wanted them, I used hot glue to glue each one on. You could also use a sewing needle and thread and sew them on. I think that would be really cute too. Now I'm going to use my corner punch and I'm going to round out the corners of the bingo card. Then using a brown ink pad, I'm going around the edges just to give it a more vintage look. You certainly wouldn't have to use buttons for this project. You could use game pieces or many other things. I'd love to know what you think you would use on this card down in the comments below. I think this is a cute little handmade ephemeral piece that you could add to any vignette to add a touch of vintage style. For this project, I'm using these graduation tags from Dollar Tree. They were pretty thin, so I glued two of them together so that the printed side was on the inside, so I had two blank sides to work with. First, of course, I removed the ribbons and saved those for another project, and I just glued these together using a simple glue stick. If you're lucky, your Dollar Tree might have graduation things on sale here soon to where you could get these even cheaper. Now I'm taking a scrap piece of cardstock and I'm using this little punch to punch out a design in a square shape. If you don't have a punch, I would simply just do the tear method to where you tear the sides of the paper so that it gives a deckled look. Next, I'm using this piece of scrapbook paper that I had in my scrap stash, and I'm just going to be cutting that down to fit on to part of this tag. I do want this to cover this whole tag, and since my paper isn't quite long enough, I'm choosing to cut two pieces, and that seam in the middle will be hidden by the original square that we punched out. So now I'm using that glue stick again, and I'm going to glue on those scrapbook papers. Once I have them glued on, I'm just going to cut off the excess paper and use my scissors to trim around the rounded top edge. This is still going to be a tag, so I'm using my hole punch to punch out that original hole. I'm using a little piece of sponge and my brown ink that you see there that's from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going around the edges of it just to give it more of an aged look. I'm also using that corner punch again just to give it more of a finished look with those rounded edges. Once I got started with this ink on the edges, I decided I would just put it all over because I really liked the way it looked. Now I'm stamping the edges of this little lacy piece here just to give it a little bit of definition up against that other scrapbook paper. I'm going to be gluing that to cover up the seam as shown here. And before I do that, I'm using this little stamp from IOD. It's from the Antiquities stamp package. And I've stamped that onto that lace piece of paper, and I'm going to glue that with that glue stick again right over that seam. I didn't want to smear the ink, so I'm just using a dry paper towel to gently push down on the square so that it's fully adhered. Now I'm using one of the IOD's stamps from the Mercantile stamp package, the number 7, and I'm going to stamp that right at the top of the tag. For the back of the tag, I left it as is, but I did use some of IOD's stamps from the ephemeral type stamp package. For a little added interest and a little bit of glam, I used some scraps that I had from IOD's Gilded Transfer sets. I'm just rubbing those on in various places. I decided to finish off that back as well with that ink pad around the edges. Now the only thing that this tag needs is some ribbon. These are just ripped strips from different fabric pieces that I had. Next one is a little bit unconventional, but I love it. These are tea bags that I had in my kitchen, and I'm just going to be opening up the little bags and emptying out the tea. We're only going to be using the bags for this project. Now you probably could order empty tea bags on Amazon, but I had these on hand, so I decided to go ahead and use them. I did want these bags to look tea stained, so what I did was I placed some instant coffee in a spray bottle with some warm water, and I sprayed them, and of course my sprayer wasn't working very well, so then I just dumped it into this little bowl and dumped the tea bags in there and let them dry. I did continue to add in some coffee granules to get the color that I wanted. Once the tea bags were dry, I went back with my IOD stamps, and this is the Antiquity stamp set, and a black ink pad, and I stamped on the front of each of these. I'm using these as just bowl fillers, so you could make as many of these as you wanted to fill up a bowl, and I think they would be adorable. I do want these to look like tea bags, so we're going to add a string. This is some twine that I had in my stash. It's very thin. I'm not sure what it's used for. I think for beading, using beads or something. So I'm going to tie a knot, and then I'm going to hot glue these into the tea bags. I'm going to restuff my tea bags using this shredded up paper, and then I'm just going to hot glue them closed. I'll add a little dot of hot glue to the knot in the string and then place that down inside the tea bag. I displayed mine in a vintage wood bowl, but you could also use a basket or anything else that you would like to add to your vignettes. I truly hope you've enjoyed these handmade ephemeral projects. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down in the comment section below and let me know which one was your favorite. If you're looking for something else to watch, I recommend this video right here. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic. Bye now.